The jungle was alive with silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that presses down on your chest and makes every breath feel too loud. In that silence, two men hunted each other. One American, one Vietnamese, both snipers, both invisible. Carlos Hathcock lay flat in the dirt, sweat dripping into his eyes, the white feather in his hatband still as a grave marker. That feather was his signature, his dare. He wanted the enemy to know he was out here, that every step they took might be their last. And the enemy knew it. They feared the feather. But this time it wasn't just fear. This time the Viet Cong had sent their own sniper to kill the legend. For days the two men crawled through the jungle, inch by inch, waiting for a mistake. No words, no noise, just patience, nerves, and the knowledge that only one of them would leave alive. Carlos scanned the terrain. He didn't look for a man. He looked for the impossible, the faintest glint, the smallest motion, the subtle wrongness in a sea of green. Hours passed. The sun rose and fell. Hunger gnawed, thirst clawed. But he didn't move. Moving meant dying. Then he saw it, just the tiniest shimmer, like a firefly that didn't belong. The reflection of light off a rifle scope. In that instant, Carlos knew. The other sniper was aiming at him. There was no time to think, no second chance. He squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, sharp and final. Silence returned, heavier than before. Carlos crawled forward and found his enemy lying still, the bullet hole punched clean through the scope and into the man's eye. One shot, one kill. It wasn't just a duel. It was a message. The white feather wasn't just decoration anymore. It was a warning. To the enemy, it meant death could come from nowhere. To the Marines, it meant one of their own was out there, keeping watch. That day cemented his legend. But Carlos Hathcock wasn't born a legend. He was born a poor boy in Arkansas, who hunted rabbits with a B-22 rifle to put food on the table. And that boy, raised in the woods, would grow into the Marine who turned patience and precision into weapons more terrifying than any machine gun. Carlos Norman Hathcock, too, grew up in the backwoods of Arkansas during the Depression. His father worked hard, his mother struggled to keep the family together, and little Carlos learned early that life didn't hand you much. If you wanted food on the table, sometimes you had to go out and bring it back yourself. As a boy, he carried a worn-out .22 rifle through the fields and forests, hunting squirrels and rabbits, not for sport, not for trophies, but because supper depended on it. He learned to move quietly, to read the wind, to notice the flick of an ear or the twitch of grass that betrayed an animal's presence. He practiced until one shot was enough, because missing meant going hungry. Those long hours in the woods weren't just chores. They were training. Training in patience, training in silence, training in the kind of focus that separates a hunter from a wanderer. Carlos didn't know it yet, but he was already building the skills that would make him one of the most feared marksmen in history. Like many boys of his generation, he dreamed of wearing a uniform. He wanted to be a Marine. The sharp dress blues, the discipline, the pride. It was the kind of life he could imagine himself giving everything for. So when the chance came, he joined the Marine Corps before he was even old enough to drink. Boot camp was no joke. The heat, the shouting drill instructors, the endless push-ups and marches. But for Carlos, the hardest parts weren't hard. He thrived on discipline. He didn't complain, he didn't quit, and he shot straighter than anyone expected. It wasn't long before his talent on the rifle range started turning heads. In competition, he was a natural. His scores climbed. His name began to spread among Marine marksmen, and soon he was traveling to shooting matches, representing the Corps. His dream of being a Marine wasn't just real now. It was bigger than that. He wasn't just another recruit. He was on his way to being one of the best. By the early 1960s, Carlos Hathcock had a reputation inside the Corps as a man who could make a rifle do things most men couldn't believe. And when America's shadow war in Vietnam started heating up, there was no question where his skills would take him. The boy who had once crouched in the Arkansas woods with a .22 was about to find himself in jungles on the other side of the world, where the stakes were life, death, and the line between them measured in the pull of a trigger. Vietnam was a war of shadows. The jungles swallowed sound, the heat suffocated men, and the enemy seemed to melt into the trees. For Carlos Hathcock, it was the perfect hunting ground, but also the deadliest. He carried a Winchester Model 70 rifle, .30-06 caliber, with a standard scope. Nothing exotic, nothing custom-built, just a Marine and his rifle. But in his hands that rifle became something else entirely, an extension of his will, a scalpel in a war of sledgehammers. Carlos became known to his brothers for his patience. He could lie in the same position for hours, unmoving, letting ants crawl across his skin, letting the sun burn his back just to wait for the perfect shot. Some missions stretched not hours, but days. He once crawled for over 3 days, inch by inch through the grass, to get within range of a high-value target. He moved so slowly that a water snake slid across his arm, and he didn't even flinch. Finally, he lined up the shot, squeezed the trigger, and ended the mission with a single bullet. Then he crawled all the way back out. That was Carlos. No drama, no shouting, just endless discipline. But his legend wasn't just about the kills. It was about the symbol. Hathcock tucked a single white feather into his bush hat. It was a dare, a message to the enemy. I'm here, and you can't stop me. Viet Cong and North Vietnamese troops feared him so much that they put a bounty on his head, reportedly as high as 30,000. To them, the white feather meant death. To the Marines, it meant safety, because they knew Carlos was watching over them. His missions became stories whispered across the division. One day, a platoon pinned down by enemy fire would hear a single shot ring out, and suddenly, the machine gun nest tearing them apart would go silent. Marines would cheer. White feathers got our backs. Then there was the duel. The enemy sent their best sniper to hunt him. For days, both men crawled, waiting, listening, looking for the faintest mistake. Carlos saw it first, the glint of sunlight off the other sniper's scope. In one motion, he fired. The bullet went straight through the scope and into the enemy's eye. One shot, one kill. A shot so precise, so improbable, it became a legend of its own. Carlos was racking up confirmed kills at a rate no one had seen before. By the end of his tours, the official count was 93 confirmed, but those who served with him knew the real number was far higher. Confirmed kills required witnesses, and many of his missions had none but himself. Estimates put the total closer to 300. Yet if you asked Carlos, it was never about numbers. He never glorified the killing. To him, it was duty. It was survival. It was protecting his brothers. His calm, his patience, his willingness to wait hours for a single moment. It wasn't about personal glory. It was about bringing more Marines home alive. In Vietnam, Hathcock became more than a sniper. He became a ghost. To the enemy, a nightmare. To his men, a guardian. And to history, the white feather. For all his skill, Carlos Hathcock was not untouchable. War has a way of reaching even its ghosts. In 1969, his armored vehicle struck an anti-tank mine. The explosion tore through steel and flesh, throwing Carlos into fire and chaos. Flames swallowed the interior. With his body burning, he clawed his way out, dragging other Marines with him. The pain was indescribable, but he refused to leave his brothers to die. By the time the fire was out, his body was covered in burns, his skin scarred for life. His days as a combat sniper were over, The wounds ran deeper than the skin. The physical agony was constant, and the war had left marks no surgeon could cut away. Carlos carried the weight of every shot he had ever fired, every face that never returned from the jungle. He never spoke about numbers. He never bragged. If anything, he avoided the subject. Killing wasn't glory to him. It was the burden of duty. But Hathcock wasn't finished serving. He turned his pain into purpose, training the next generation of Marine snipers. The Marine Corps sniper school that still produces some of the best marksmen in the world carries his fingerprints in every lesson. He taught not just how to shoot, but how to wait, how to endure, how to let patience and discipline become weapons sharper than any blade. In his later years, multiple sclerosis attacked his body, robbing him of movement. For a man who had once crawled for miles without making a sound, the disease was a cruel enemy. But even then, his spirit never broke. He became a symbol not just of a sniper's art, but of resilience in the face of suffering. Marines still tell his stories, the feather, the scope shot, the endless crawl. They chant his name in sniper schools. His legend lives in the whisper of wind over a rifle barrel, in the silence before a trigger breaks, in the belief that one man with discipline and purpose can change the course of a battle. Carlos Hathcock didn't see himself as a hero. He saw himself as a Marine doing his job. But history saw something else. A man who mastered the art of patience, who turned hunting into warfare, and who carried the unbearable weight of it all without complaint. The white feather will never vanish. Because legends don't belong to one war or one man. They belong to every Marine who lifts a rifle and whispers to himself in the stillness, "Wait, wait." Now,